Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for accommodating me this way. It's been a bearable week, but here I am. Here we are. Um, cool. I'll just go ahead and start. So I'm looking at this. I'm calling it Seeing with Touch. Um, Maybe I'll come up with a better title soon, but that's what I have now. So recently I've been thinking a lot about how mixed reality tech fundamentally changes phenomenological relationships humans have with like virtual media through its ability to collapse together real material experiences and digital virtual experiences in human perception. Um, Mixed reality technology is great for thinking about knowing and not knowing, I think, because as a form of media, it can uniquely access a liminal place that exists between those two states. And its ability to give us more intimate and embodied access to technological representations of the virtual, it can evoke also things like instinctual responses or the experience of believability, for example. I think of mixed or augmented reality and VR as well to some degree functions kind of like a Rosetta Stone that translates technological abstraction into a more intuitive and relatable state that can be recognized by the body more easily. I think this is more obviously represented in the use of embodied tech manifestations like headsets, for example, because they go in your head. But is also true in the more common smartphone-driven experiences that we're all getting more and more used to, like, I don't know, to mention a few marketplace examples like Warby Parker's eyeglasses simulator or Amazon's virtual placement tool. But that all being said, my project, or the project that I'm kind of embarking on right now, focuses on using haptics, specifically haptic feedback engines, the kind commonly used or found in video games or video game production, in conjunction with augmented or mixed reality tech to attempt to, shall we say, imbue the sense of touch with the experience of eyes and ears. Put another way, how can I make my sense of touch see in ways that are perhaps similar to how my eyes see? Okay. So mixed reality tech's ability to facilitate this collapse is useful because it provides an opportunity for me to think about how to rewire, to some degree, the human body's sensorium through an external medium. And I arrived at this through a kind of cataloging and technical analysis of modern mixed reality tech. And Catherine Hale's also, how we became posthuman, inspired me to think about how mixed reality tech systemically and mechanically reproduces the human body's sensorium in material terms that are external to the body. For example, mixed reality systems are constructed from specific standalone technologies that have their own complex histories and legacies, right, and uses. But when these components are curated and assembled and thought about as one system, that system starts to vaguely resemble the body in certain ways, in really weird and certain ways, right? So the work of Myron Kruger is another inspiration. Steve Mann as well. They both come to mind when I think of this embodied systemization. For example, digital cameras, I mean, this is a pretty common example, but digital cameras can be thought about as a mechanical reproduction of the human eye. The LiDAR, which is a common piece of tech that's used in AR and mixed reality, is a mechanical reproduction of the human body's intuitive ability to understand an environment's dimensions. Interactive thresholds defined in software that control hardware reactions mechanically reproduce the human body's sense of anticipation, for example, in spatial relationships, especially when they're given the data from microphones or from cameras or from LiDARs, right? So we have this whole system that starts to weirdly look like, the body, we're like making ourselves, right? So additionally, this material mimicry forces the human body to be understood as an object to be interfaced with or plugged into. In his work, Optical Media by Friedrich Hitler, Kittler takes the position that the human body is fundamentally contingent and gains a form of significance when it is engaging with external media systems. So haptic feedback engines also perform this kind of interfacing by association because they're often used in these systems. But they're interesting because they do not necessarily recreate aspects of the human body sensorium in the same ways as the other examples that I've mentioned. But they're usually, again, included in these systems. They do not like sense things in the same way as a camera, right? They're more like, or like a LiDAR, but they're more like a data delivery system, something that comes to us, right? So the vibrational vibrations can be felt. They can also be heard, and if you have the ability to hear, which makes them also very interesting that way. And these vibrational patterns have the ability to deliver complex communication. So this, another way that I was drawn towards haptics, I think, was through David Parisi's book, Archaeologies of Touch. If anyone's read that book, it's a great book. Highly recommend it. He refers to these kinds of haptic systems as being designed and thought about within the context of what he calls tactile modernity. So this is kind of leading me down this path of some questions, right? So can touch do similar work over distance that eyes and ears can do outside of the realm of direct contact? In Homuncular Flexibility, which is this article that was written by Jerome Lanier, Andrea Stevenson-Wan, and Jeremy Valentin, they discuss something called ipsimodal remapping, which attempts to describe adaptations and behavioral responses in humans through the use of sensory substitution technologies like sensory aids that use audio for people who have compromised sight, for example. In the article, they refer to a VR experiment they conducted that examines the sensory remapping, where extra virtual limbs are added to a user's virtual body. And the experimenters further complicate this by intentionally giving the control mechanisms for the virtual arm very unintuitive controls, right? And so in this experiment, the users would attempt to make the new virtual limb function like their real arm by adapting to the imposed abstracted or non-intuitive control pattern. And put simply, because it sort of like looks like an arm and appears in their perception to be attached to their bodies the way that maybe the real arms are, their immediate response is to first attempt to make it move like a normal arm by adapting to the control mechanism. So this inspired me in a few ways. If sight and hearing do the work over distance, can we also maybe think about these senses as having an appendage-like quality? If so, can the sense of touch also be made into its own kind of appendage apart from the arm or hand or other type of limb, I guess, that normally extends it to do its work through direct contact? So can the sense of touch reach into an environment in similar ways that hearing and sight do through the use of haptic feedback and mixed reality technology, and deliver a sensory experience that is perhaps similar? So for a prototype, I'm just in a theoretical stage right now, but I'm thinking about how to build this. And I've been thinking about starting with using like a haptic glove. You can buy these. A LiDAR system, if anyone's familiar with those, it's basically like a system that topographies or understands velocity or understands placement or location in an environment and makes a computational model of that, or it aids in it, at least collects the data for that computational model. And a computer that can run 3D simulations, and of course, probably will use a game development engine of some kind, haptic feedback library, collision detection library. These are all available, like in Unity, for example. And then some questions I've been asking myself, sort of, in front of this, trying to, and of course, I'm going to probably find some more questions along the way. We all do, but so what exactly is the experience of seeing an environment or hearing an environment? What is the experience of seeing an environment in terms of touch? Is this already happening? How is it happening? What is the experience of a space where sight, hearing, and touch all work together? What is the experience of a space only in terms of hearing, only seeing, only touching? How does my sense of touch make sense of a space? How do people other than myself make sense of touch in terms of understanding an environment? How does my sense of touch determine proximity? Does my sense of touch understand or recognize proximity without the use of my eyes or ears? If so, how? Without the use of my eyes or ears, what kinds of interactions, vibrational feedback, et cetera, might work as a means of communication about an environment? How can haptic vibrational patterns be used as an interactive model for communication? And in environments with lots of things or bodies or surfaces, is there such a thing as a noise threshold in terms of a sensory experience, right? If so, what is it and how is this determined? How is the noise threshold different for touch versus hearing or seeing? What are the ways in which touch knows an environment? How is this different from seeing and hearing? How are they similar? And what roles do memory, muscle memory, or previous experience play, right? These are just a few questions. There's probably a gazillion more I could ask and bring into this, of course, and that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing it with all of you. But that's essentially it. I have another thread that I could probably include in this, but I think I would probably maybe it's best for me to maybe sum that up there. But yeah, that's it.